So welcome back to episode 2 of The Work. As I mentioned in my podcast yesterday, introducing this new podcast, it is about finding and doing the meaningful, important work. And today I'm going to be talking about how you can start to understand some of the beliefs you have, understand some of the limiting beliefs you have, and start to recreate and build more helpful belief systems. Now, when you hear this stuff, and when I first heard this stuff, I'll be honest with you, it sounded a little bit fluffy. I was like, yeah, big deal. Like, this sounds a little bit untangible. Doesn't really sound like it's going to make much of a difference to my life. But the more challenges you experience in life, the more you push yourself, the more you want to achieve your full potential, the more you'll find there'll be some of these blockers in your way. And often we are our own blocker. We restrict ourselves. We hamper our own progress through our own thoughts. And a lot of our thoughts are stemmed from some of our deep-rooted beliefs about ourselves, maybe about others or the world. So this is something that we all need to work on. And thinking about our thoughts, what we call metacognition, is really vital, because if you're not aware of the way that you're thinking, if you're not aware of some of the beliefs you have, you become the slave to them. And then what happens is you accept every thought, every belief at face value, and then you become cemented to them. Your identity becomes that belief. You are that person. The world is this way. And if they're limiting and unhelpful, you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay in a fixed place. And that at some time is going to be really frustrating to you, because you're going to say, I want a little bit more from life. I want to achieve more. I want to reach my full potential. You might want more from your relationships, more from your health. But you can't do that if you're being tied by these unhelpful thoughts and negative limiting beliefs. So I'm really excited to kind of help you guys understand this subject a little bit more, but as always, give you some practical advice of things you can go away and do that can help loosen the grip on some of these beliefs. And this is maybe a really important place to start, is certain beliefs will be a little bit more surface level, but I believe that, but you can quite easily change that belief. You just need a little bit of extra information. Someone challenges it and you're like, I get it. Great, you know what? I can see that perspective. I've changed the way I think. But there'll be some of these deep-rooted beliefs that are really, or have really become part of your identity. And you're emotionally attached to them. And if someone's to challenge that, wow, that can really be uncomfortable. And most of us are just going to push that away. We don't really want to entertain that, because that can form a bit of kind of confusion in our minds. We think, well, I am this type of person. Don't tell me that I'm not that type of person, or don't tell me that other people aren't the way that I think they are. Of course they are. So you're just going to stay in this kind of shallow world. You're going to stay in this kind of incubator forever, because essentially you become your own echo chamber. You believe everything that you say. You turn your beliefs into facts, and it just holds you back. You just can't have as good a life. So on the surface, this type of podcast might sound like big deal. What's the point? But I can tell you, you will be able to unlock some really important stuff if you can do the work. And the work isn't just listening to a podcast. It isn't just taking information in. It's doing the work to implement the information. And that might be challenging some of your cognitions, challenging some of your thoughts, trying on a different belief. And this is some of the stuff that I'm going to help you with today, that I'm quite excited to take you through. So if you don't challenge them, you're just going to stay stuck. You're going to stay in the same place. Let me share an example, a personal example. So growing up, I had a lot of kind of learning difficulties. Being dyslexic in the kind of traditional academic system, especially in the 80s and 90s, you kind of had to fit into a certain way of learning and a certain way of doing things. And if your brain couldn't quite fit into that, you'd end up feeling a little bit thick, a little bit stupid. And that was kind of the messages that I picked up. And that became a belief that I am not capable, I'm not intelligent. And as I got older, I started to learn more about beliefs, I started to challenge myself more. I realised that that was actually not the case. That was a belief and it wasn't a fact. I had to change and challenge what I thought intelligence was. I had to think out of the box, had to understand myself better and be open to creating new experiences, to challenge myself, to update that unhelpful belief. And this is the stuff that I'm going to help guide you with today. Now, what you're going to find is, unfortunately, the more you challenge yourself, the louder these voices can get. Let's stick to the example that I shared. Got a belief that I'm not intelligent, that I'm stupid, I'm a little bit thick. And then I go and challenge myself. I go and do something that pushes me out of my comfort zone academically. I'm doing an exam, I'm trying to teach others and educate other people, I'm trying to learn more, go on courses. And the more uncomfortable those experiences get, the louder the voice gets. And you have to be able to kind of steer your boat in the direction you want to go in while those loud voices are there. And at some point, those voices will start to calm down. Metaphor I've shared before is imagine you are sailing your own boat. And at first, you're just kind of drifting. You're not really sailing it in a kind of purposeful, meaningful direction. You're just drifting along. But you get a bit bored. You're feeling like you're getting a bit complacent. You're feeling a bit lethargic. You're certainly not feeling very satisfied or fulfilled. So you go, right, sod it. I can see an island over there. That's the direction I'm going to go in. But as you go in that direction, you didn't realise there's these demons and monsters under the deck. And they come up and they start to get really loud and they shout at you and they get louder and louder the closer you get to the island. You go, no way, this is not worth it. I've got to come up with a different way of handling it. So you have a bit of a deal with the monsters and say, look, if I don't move in a purposeful direction, I don't challenge myself to kind of go over there, will you sort of leave me alone? And they're like, yeah, we'll leave you alone, fine, we're not going to bother you. But again, you find you get a bit bored, you get a bit lethargic, you get a bit complacent, you're lacking fulfillment and a sense of achievement. So you go, I can't cope with this, I really need to sail in that direction. This is important to me, that island looks great, it's got all the things on it that I enjoy and want to do. So you go again. And again, those loud monsters come up, scary demons. But what you start to realise is that they can't actually hurt you. They can't damage you. And you learn to tolerate them. And you realise that as you sail, they get a little bit bored. They start to quiet down a little bit. Some of them just fade away. And sometimes they're replaced with some different monsters and different demons. But you learn to tolerate them and still navigate and sail in the purposeful direction. And that metaphor sums up your progress in life. You cannot progress without uncomfortable thoughts, without some difficult emotions. That's part of the process. And actually, the more you challenge yourself, the louder those voices can get. So it's about learning to manage them, learning to modify them by challenging them and some of the skills I'm going to teach you later, so they have less control over you. So every single person has beliefs about who they are, about other people and about the world. Some of them are really helpful, some of them are really serving you, and some are unhelpful. And limiting beliefs are the ones that you've kind of repeated so often over and over again, they feel like they've become facts. You're like, yeah, that's it. That is reality. And there might be things like, here, some of the common ones, like, I'll fail. If I do that, I'm not going to succeed. I'm going to fail. I'm not good enough. And you know what? These things make sense because, let's be honest here, a belief is there to sometimes protect you. And if you can say, I'm going to fail because I tried something similar in the past and it didn't work out. If I do that, I'm going to fail. Okay, well, do you really want that thing? And if you do, then that belief can be limiting and hold you back from implementing or taking action or moving forward in the direction you want to go in. So it makes sense why you might have it because it keeps you safe. It actually stops you challenging yourself, doesn't it? It stops you sailing your boat in that meaningful direction. It gets you to really just drift around and see. Drift and drift and drift. But really, if we're honest, none of us enjoy just drifting. There'll be moments when we do. But if we drift for too long, you're going to start to suffer. You're going to start to feel like, what's the point? What's the purpose? What value am I offering myself and others? Am I being a good leader? Am I supporting? Am I taking care of others? Am I taking care of myself? Like, am I living in line with my values and my goals? And you can't do any of those things if you don't start to challenge your beliefs. You'll kind of stay the same. You'll give yourself a really, really convincing narrative that it's okay to stay where you are. And you know what? You like the idea of being over there. And maybe one day you might do it, but just not right now. Because maybe another limiting belief is, just don't have the time, don't have the experience, can't afford to do that right now. And there could be some rational evidence for that. But if we're really honest again, and this is a big part of this podcast, to be brutally honest, you develop experience through starting to do the thing. There's never going to be a time where you're going to feel fully competent and fully experienced before you start anything. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a place where you go, I've got loads of free time now to do that thing. And you might never feel like you've quite ever got the financial situation to go and implement and do that thing. But all these things can hold you back. They can limit you from ever taking action. So hopefully you can start to see already how some of these common, very common beliefs and stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves safe and comfortable actually cause more distress in our lives. Because to live a good quality life means having some things that bring achievement. That means doing things that are challenging, because you don't feel a sense of achievement or satisfaction through doing something that's easy. But if it's going to be challenging, it means it's going to be uncomfortable. If it's going to be uncomfortable, those voices are going to get a little bit louder, and there's going to be some uncomfortable emotions that come along for the ride. And that's just how it is. That's just a fact. Okay, we just have to learn to manage them. And if you've not experienced this stuff before, maybe I can challenge you and get you to ask yourself, how often have you been out your comfort zone? Because if you're out your comfort zone, you would have known if you've been there, or people will tell you, I felt this real imposter syndrome. Okay, so there was a belief that maybe you're not good enough, or a belief that you can't give this talk or do this thing, and that's okay. Like, let's not pathologise these things. It's normal to have the belief and have the uncomfortable feeling, but it's about implementing it anyway, still doing that important thing for you anyway. That's the key. The important and meaningful thing for you and your life, not for somebody else, for you and your life. Now, the longer we have believed these things, the more they become a part of us. They become a part of our identity. I am this person. And when that becomes too fixed, our world becomes so narrow. Now, we know that certain identities could be helpful. Let's say someone who goes to the gym quite a lot, if they identify as someone who exercises, then they're probably more likely to continue exercising because they see themselves as that type of person. We could challenge that and say, okay, you've got to be careful that doesn't become so rigid that it kind of takes over your life, and actually you can't just have the exercise hat on all the time. You've got to have different hats and different identities and a different sense of purpose at times. That's a fair perspective. But generally, there's helpful ways of viewing yourself and maybe some unhelpful ways. If you see yourself as someone who's maybe, I don't know, I'm just a lazy person, or I've just got an addictive personality, or I'm someone who only gets things done when there's a few hours to do that task or whatever, then you end up becoming that person. You become the thing that you believe. And that might be unhelpful in some certain situations. Let me give you another story. And I like this one because it's a real simple way to understand limiting beliefs. So one day there was a baby elephant at a circus. To stop it getting away, to stop it running away, because it probably cost a few quid, don't they, elephants? The people at the circus put a little bit of a rope around its neck and just smashed the rope into the ground with a very basic stake, just enough to give that baby elephant a bit of resistance so it couldn't break away and it couldn't escape. But as the baby elephant grew up and got bigger and stronger and actually physically capable, it still believed it couldn't get away. So it stopped trying. It's like, well, I couldn't get away in the past. I failed previously, so why even try now? So they believe, or the baby elephant, now an adult elephant, has this belief that it can't escape, and that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What you believe becomes reality. And this is what a lot of us, all of us in some shape or form, can fall into. I believe this because of what happened in the past, especially if it's something uncomfortable. So why try again? That might happen with relationships. I went through a really painful relationship in the past. This happened and the breakup was really uncomfortable. I don't want to go through that again. So if I tell myself that I'm just someone who should be single forever or will be single forever or isn't good in relationships, then guess what? That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to challenge these things, otherwise we miss out on the great experiences in life. Okay, we miss out on growing, we miss out on developing, we miss out on connection, and we miss out on achieving our full potential. So you can probably see by now that beliefs can influence everything. The famous Henry Ford quote is, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And that's what we're saying, isn't it? If I think that I can't do something, I'm right. And if I think that I can, maybe I can be right. And of course, we could challenge that because we're not all capable of doing everything, are we? I was never going to be an Olympic sprinter or a basketball player or probably an Olympic anything. That's okay, no matter how much I believed I could. But that's not to say believing in myself more and more couldn't allow me to have achieved more, reached a greater potential, because it could have done. And we see this with professional athletes. To them achieving their full potential, the psychological aspect is so important now. But we can all use that in our own lives. So many of us have almost got this kind of brake on, just a little bit of brake that's stopping us going further. We don't realise we're kind of holding our foot on it. It's kind of regulating our speed. And we go, oh no, you don't go any further than that. That's as much as you can go. That's as fast as you can go. But actually, psychologically, we just need to kind of take that restrictor off. When we take that restrictor off, we realise we can go faster, or we can achieve more. We can reach an even fuller potential than what we imagined, because we're not being as restricted by our own mindset anymore. And we know time and time again, the power of the mind is unbelievable. One of my clients came in and told me a story that she had heard some time ago, and this story highlights the power of the mind and what you believe becoming reality. So the story goes, there was a group of workmen working on these kind of big kind of industrial fridges, and they all left for the night, but one man got stuck inside this fridge. And he was panicking, going, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he could see that as the night went on, the fridge was getting colder and colder. He could just see that dial go and go down to colder temperatures, and colder temperatures. And he could feel the effects of hypothermia creeping in. And the following day, the other workmen came back and they opened up the fridge and they found that he had died. But even more sad, I suppose, in some ways, is that they realised the fridge was actually broken and the temperature stayed the same throughout the whole night. So what the dial was saying, what the man believed he was experiencing, he wasn't actually experiencing. But because he believed it so much, he had the symptoms of hypothermia and he ended up dying through hypothermia. Now, that's a crazy story to get your head around, but if we think about the stories you would have heard of the power of the placebo effect, how something inert, something that can't actually influence my physiology, like a pill, by believing it's going to affect my physiology, it affects my physiology. And that is the power of our beliefs. That is the power of our minds. But if I'm honest, we don't often work on our minds. It's something that I've spoken about so often. It doesn't mean you've got to spend 5 hours a day meditating. It just means to be able to challenge your beliefs, to be able to do a little bit of mental fitness, just to do some psychological work can help you grow, help you develop and change your life. But we have to actually put the energy and the work in. And that is the key philosophy of this podcast. So really, I suppose we could say the mind creates the outcomes that we believe. Your beliefs will shape what you expect to happen. And what I expect to happen might also influence my actions. And my actions start to shape my outcomes. Okay, the man in the fridge, he believed he was getting colder. He expected to be getting colder. So his body acted in that way. It experienced the cold even though objectively that wasn't happening, to the extreme degree that he died. That is how powerful the mind is. Unbelievable stuff. So something that gets spoken about in the mindset world is kind of scarcity mindset and growth mindset. And again, this stems through your belief system. So simply put, a scarcity mindset is the belief that there isn't enough to go around. There isn't enough kind of money, there isn't enough kind of love, there isn't enough opportunities, there just isn't enough. And then when you believe there isn't enough, that again becomes your reality. It shapes the way that you think about situations. You don't start to see opportunities when they're there. And that's the way that your life turns out. A life that is scarce, a life that doesn't have enough in it. But if you believe, let's go back to the relationship example. If you believe, okay, I've been hurt, I've been in love before and it didn't work out, but I believe I can find a future partner, I can find someone else to connect with and to love and to have this beautiful relationship with one day. Who knows as and when that would happen. If you believe that, that is far more likely to happen. If you don't believe it, it's far more unlikely to happen because you're always looking for evidence to back up your beliefs. You'll find evidence to back up your beliefs. So if I believe that I could never be in a relationship again and I start dating someone that doesn't work out, I'll be like, told you so. I was right. Things don't work out. It's just the way that it is for me. If you've got a scarcity mindset and you don't believe that there's enough opportunities to go around, then as soon as there's a challenge and you lose out on something or you get rejected, you're like, told you. That's the way that it is. rather than just seeing that as part of the process. And a growth mindset person believes that there can be an abundance of things. There can be opportunities in different ratios, at different times, in different circumstances, but there can be opportunities. They believe that they can grow and they can improve and they can learn, even with some rejection, even with some failure, even when things don't go right. So a growth-minded person would come out of a relationship and go, that was painful, that was hard, that wasn't nice, but I've learned some stuff. I've learned about myself, I've learned about relationships, and actually I can take all of that to become a better version of myself when I'm in that next relationship. And that is the growth mindset, because you believe in yourself, you believe you can grow, you believe you can adapt, and you can learn. So I suppose beliefs can allow you to move forward even through failure and discomfort, as long as they're helpful. As long as they're helpful. And this is it, like, helpful beliefs will help you be more resilient, because you go, oh, well, this is a challenge, this is a bit of a failure, it's a bit of a setback, but I believe I can come back. I believe I can still move forward, even if there's failure and discomfort. Now, what we start to see with some of our unhelpful thoughts is that very often there's a deep-rooted belief triggering that thought. And if we don't look at the belief, we don't look at the root, we start to find we have these reoccurring thoughts over and over that we start to cement and believe. Because we can't just control our thoughts and just go, I'll just switch that thought off. Don't fancy that anymore. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes they'll be louder, sometimes they'll be quieter, sometimes, again, going back to the boat metaphor, sometimes they might fade away. But all you can control is how you manage your thought and where you decide to place your energy and focus, and what you decide to concentrate on. Like, I can concentrate on the fact that I think I'm an idiot and I've flawed here and bad at this and weak at this, or I can choose to focus on, okay, not perfect, but here are some of my strengths, here are some of the things that I'm good at, here are some of the areas that are worth putting time, energy and focus into, because I believe that I'm capable of being strong in those areas. Game changer. So let's give you an example. Here's a common one. Okay, if I'm working with a client and they're struggling to stick with some of the kind of positive habits and positive kind of behaviours that we've been working on, maybe they go off track a little bit, maybe there's a slight lapse. Fine, it happens, we have a slight lapse. But if that slight lapse then turns into a thought process of, I'm just someone who can't stick to routines, I'm just someone who just can't ever stay on track. And that is because there's a deep-rooted belief, potentially, that they're not a disciplined person. Okay? Well, when you believe that you're able to be disciplined at times, doesn't mean you've got to be some sort of like sergeant major here, okay? But you've got the ability to be disciplined. You've got the capacity to be resilient, but to be disciplined. Then you go, okay, well, I am that person, but it's okay. I've just lapsed a little bit. That then stops it turning to a total relapse. Rather than what happens is they're all or nothing. So they're on it, great. And if they're not on it according to how they should be and according to their expectations, then they're off it because they're like, oh, I've blown it now, haven't I? I've had a drink, or I've ate some bad food, or I've had an argument with the missus and I've let myself down, or I haven't done what I'm going to at work. Whatever it is, they can't be compassionate with themselves because they don't believe they're strong or able to adapt or disciplined or whatever. So when we look at some of those businesses, I'm going to share with you some kind of real key ones in a bit that I think you'll definitely be able to relate to. So by addressing the belief, it allows you to have a slip and then come back, rather than a slip just confirming that belief in yourself and reinforcing that identity. Oh, I'm just that person who is like that. That becomes really rigid and really kind of confines you in this little incubator, that ultimately you just repeat that same thing for decades and decades. If we can learn to see a thought and a belief as just that exact thing. Just a thought and just a belief. We can start to slowly, gradually over time, loosen its grip on us and go, well, I'm not that thought. I'm not that belief. They're just words. And some of those words I know will be far more cemented than others, will be far more fixed. So fixed you don't even see them as a belief. So fixed you can't even see the difference between the story you tell yourself and the reality. Because the story you've told yourself for so long has become your reality. I know that is really difficult, but hardships and challenges and difficulties are an opportunity to see some of these things that maybe when life's a bit more cushy and just ticking along, you don't see them. So there's a style of therapy called rational emotive behaviour therapy. What it does, it's pretty simple there really, I suppose, including the title. It's trying to get us to think about more rational kind of ways of viewing ourselves, rather than less emotive narratives or negative beliefs. And what it will do, it will look at the core of some of our cognitive struggles, which in turn will turn into emotional struggles, which in turn will affect our behaviours. So you have to be able to see in this kind of cognitive behavioural therapy model, in the fact that if we're talking about thoughts and beliefs, we can never look at those mutually exclusively. They're going to influence your emotions, and that's all going to influence your behaviours. And they all have this kind of relationship back and forth. Okay, but we have to be able to look at the full picture here. But to be able to get to the root of some of these thoughts by looking at the beliefs can be really helpful. So let me share with you some kind of common ones here that I'm sure some of us can fall into, because we can be really rigid with how things should be or how we should be. And when things don't turn out how we think they should, or we don't end up being how we think we should, then we really start to create more distress for ourselves. So let's give you some example of kind of three of the sort of common ones here. So, I must always succeed and be liked. Now, these are often really subconscious, and you don't know they're there until, guess what? You don't succeed, or someone doesn't like you. That happens. Okay, you won't succeed at everything, and there are plenty of people who don't like you. But if you've got a belief that you need to be accepted by everyone and liked by everyone, and you must succeed at everything, when you inevitably don't, because of that belief, that will cause you a lot of mental distress and in turn emotional distress. So to again challenge that belief can be really hard, but to say, I won't always succeed. Pretty healthy belief. Not everyone will like me. Pretty healthy belief. Okay, another example. Others must treat me fairly. And this is one that many of us struggle with. You go around town, you are in a situation at work, and someone treats you badly. You know, maybe it's disrespectful, maybe they hurt you, maybe that's not deliberate, but it's by accident, but yet you feel like you haven't been treated fairly. Now, if we're honest again, that's going to happen. We're not all going to get treated fairly, because, as my mum used to tell me, life isn't fair. And that is true. You know, it's really not. And that's painful, isn't it? That's a painful thing, because really we do want everyone to be treated fairly and everything to be equal in life. But that actually isn't how life is. Okay, and we could go down tangents now and say, are things fairer than they used to be? Are they more imbalanced or imbalanced? But let's not go down that pathway, because that's kind of out the remits of this podcast anyway. But the point being is that a healthy belief? Others must treat me fairly. No. Maybe it'd be great to be treated fairly. I'm going to treat others as fairly as I can, but I can't expect other people to have the same values as me, and I can't expect the world to be how I expect it to be. And we can't, but we do subconsciously very often. Number 3, and this is an interesting one. Life must be easy. So you believe that life must be easy. And when there are inevitable challenges, there can be this understandable, why me? I always have these problems. There's always something happening to me. I'm just that type of person that has these struggles. I'm just this type of person that this and this happens to. Of course, life again isn't fair. So there's a spectrum of struggles, and some people have bigger struggles than others. Some people have more than others. That's just how it is. But wherever you are in the spectrum of life, I guarantee one thing, it's not easy. It's not easy. Okay, and if you expect it to be easy and expect it to be sunshine and rainbows, and then you're really kind of just kicking off every time, I can't believe I've got this injury. I can't believe I'm in this pain. I can't believe this thing has happened to me. That's because these things are going to happen to you, and it's not easy and it's not fair. But that's the reality here. So we have to look at what's causing our distress and get into the root of it. Otherwise, every time we get this trigger, we're going to get this big emotive response, and we're never going to be able to grow and develop from that. And we're going to repeat the same sufferings over and over again. Okay, and then we just become rigid, we become disappointed with ourselves and the world, and you can start to see how that can go down quite a negative spiral if we're not careful. Right, let's help you out now. Let's get to the core of challenging these limiting beliefs. So this is going to give you a bit of a basic process to go through. I like to give you steps to work on, but I also like to keep them as simple as possible. So, first one, what's the evidence this belief is true? Okay, like the belief that you're holding right now, let's use the one, I believe that I'm not intelligent. Let's go for that one. I believe that I'm not capable. I believe that I'm not good enough. I believe that I'm not competent. Something along that kind of theme. Okay, what evidence have you got that is true? And you know what? There might be some evidence that you found in the past, because as I said, we're great at finding evidence. I was that one time and I failed at that exam and I didn't get that right. Okay, you found some evidence, but is that a fact then that you're not capable just because you failed? Because as we said earlier, we're not always going to succeed at everything. We're going to fail at times. It doesn't mean that you're thick. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. It just means that you've had a failure in life. That is okay. You're allowed to fail and not have to take that as a dent to your identity, or to reconfirm the negative identity and belief you've got of yourself. So you'll try and find some evidence. Okay, and when we've got these limiting beliefs, we've got to be really open to challenging them. What would be a more helpful belief? Okay, what's a more helpful way of viewing it? Okay, struggle sometimes to learn. Struggle sometimes to absorb information, but that doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent. Actually, I've got some evidence over here. I've got some stuff where I have been able to learn and grow and develop and improve. Has it been easy? No. Has there been mistakes and failures? Yes. That's okay. But the more helpful belief would be, I've got the ability to learn. I've got the ability to develop and grow. That is a helpful belief. And then you're more likely to take action on that, and then you can use that action to reconfirm that belief through a positive experience, and then you start to formulate new helpful beliefs. And I'm going to kind of really kind of put the icing on the cake in a bit about how we really do this. So rather than saying, right, change your belief, change your way of thinking, sorted, job done, happy days, let's all go down the pub. It's not going to work like that, okay? You're going to have a belief that you're quite glued to. Okay, imagine you put this jacket on. It's a comfortable jacket. You know, other people wearing similar jackets. You kind of fit in, makes you feel accepted. You just match the status quo. Happy days. But then you go, I'm going to try putting on a different jacket. Okay, I don't know if I like this one, but I'm going to try putting it on. And it doesn't feel great, if I'm honest. You're like, oh, this jacket doesn't feel great. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to experience the world wearing something different. And then you get some positive feedback from the world. And slowly over time, you start to like this new jacket. That is starting to integrate a new helpful belief. Your old jacket is your unhelpful limiting belief. You take it off, you put it down, you go, I might be coming back to you in a bit, so don't you go anywhere. You put the new one on, that's the helpful belief, doesn't feel comfortable. You're open to it, but you're like, I'm not too sure. And slowly over time, through experiencing wearing a jacket, you start to change that belief. And guess what? You might take it off and put that negative one back on at times, and that's okay. But over time, you get better at wearing the new jacket. Over time, you get better at connecting with the helpful belief, okay? So that would be the one step. Just go, look, I don't really believe this, but I'll tell you what, I think I'm a pretty bad public speaker. But the one step would be just to speak in front of just a couple of people, just 2 people, okay? Just going to try there. That's the one step. Or practice speaking on camera, okay? Practice speaking on camera, try that. Okay, how'd that go? Uncomfortable, not perfect, but I did it. Great. So you now believe that you can do it, and then you practice over and over again, and eventually you get to a stage where you think, I used to believe I was a bad speaker. I'm now a good speaker, because you've changed that belief through experience. So really what we're saying here, and I'm going to emphasize this over the next sort of section of the podcast, is we learn to challenge our thoughts. We have something called metacognition, which is thinking about our thoughts, okay? And, great thing to ask ourselves is, okay, this is what I'm thinking, but you know what? It's almost quite narcissistic to think that our thoughts are the best. Why are my thoughts the best? Why do I have to believe everything that I think? I wonder what an intelligent person, or someone who knows me, hopefully all the people I know is intelligent, so the two are together here. An intelligent person would say about this thought. Or intelligent person, close friends, as I said, hopefully the two for you. How would they challenge you? So you're kind of getting out of your own way. You're getting out your own incubator, out your own box and going, I wonder what someone else would say. And you know what, very often they wouldn't be saying the same things to you. And you think, that's what that person would say to me. Right, well, try that coat on for a little bit. Try that coat on. And maybe if you're having this limited belief around your capabilities and what you can achieve, just look back, and I challenge you to do this. I challenge you to look at where you've been successful in all the areas of your life. That could be friendships, relationships, it could be academically, it could be in your career, it could be challenges that you've taken on, it could be physical things, sports, whatever. Where have you succeeded? What does that say about the type of person that you are? What kind of characteristics have you had to install to be the type of person to be successful at these things? Look at that. Look at the areas that you have been successful in. So how we do this, really, if I'm honest, is we get in a situation, we develop this kind of awareness through being a bit more introspective and going, you know what? Every time I'm here, I pull away because I'm thinking this. Okay, so you catch the thought, you catch the unhelpful thought, and then you learn to sort of challenge it and go, you know what? You don't have to be right here. There could be another thought here that I could focus on. So rather than I'm a failure, I'm thick, I'm stupid, I'm not capable, I'm not deserving, there's not enough, etc., 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 you go, what if there is enough? And what if I am enough? Okay, well actually I've got some evidence to back that up. There's been plenty of times when people have liked me for who I am and my authentic self. Great, okay, well why don't I try and focus more on that belief? And as I said, that will take time depending on how cemented that belief is. And over time, through new experiences, you can change it. And I want to have empathy for you here. This takes work. It takes time, it takes patience, and you won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll take a step back before taking a few steps forward. and you think you're doing really well, and life will throw you something, a curveball, and suddenly those unhelpful beliefs come back again. But I believe it's something that we can all work on, we can all improve on. So as we're getting towards the end here, let's think about this. Awareness is everything. That is doing that inner work. Awareness is always the first step. It's the action that does create the change. We have to actually have some action. I have to go and experience speaking to change my belief system about speaking. Ultimately, it comes down to that. It might mean taking action before, or very likely, before that belief is changed. I can change that belief and go, but you know what, I don't really start to believe that new updated belief until I've had a new experience, until I've taken the action. Okay, because our beliefs are really reshaped through new experiences. And this is because we have neuroplasticity. Okay, our brains are adapting to our thoughts as well, but definitely to new experiences. So you can change because your brain can change. We know this. We know the brain is plastic, it can be molded, it can be changed if you're willing to do the work. So let me just finish off by saying your beliefs are not set in stone. They are set through you just believing it over and over again and repeating those negative things. If we can learn to change our experiences, change our kind of emotions around that experience, and what I mean by that is you can't just switch your emotions on and off, but by being open to new experiences, you've been open to different emotions and repeat it. Can't just do public speaking once or twice. Got to practice speaking over and over and over so I can start to believe that I could be a better speaker. And we can apply it to any single area, your health behaviours, your relationships, your career. It's all about learning to challenge them and see them. And ultimately, if you can build better beliefs, you can build a better life. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast, guys, first and foremost, thank you for listening. A slightly longer one today because it's a big subject, and even in this, I'm scraping the surface. If it is an area you think you're struggling with a little bit, then my contact details at the bottom of this or in the show notes. Click on them. Have a look at some of my Instagram stuff because I talk about this in short, concise things in Instagram. If you think this will help somebody else, do me a massive favour of sharing it or following the show. I very rarely ask for anything from my audience in God knows how many podcasts that I've done over the years. But actually, it'd be really, really, I would really appreciate that if you could follow this show and recommend it to somebody else. And if you do want to do a bit of deeper work, like I said, please kind of get in touch because I am always open to helping people who want to grow and want to develop. Thank you for listening, guys, and I look forward to speaking to you very soon.